Hi Ramanand, welcome to the next edition in our Smart Liver series.
Hi Harish.
The topic of this episode seems to be something like an anti-smart liver. Are we talking about procrastination? No, okay, I think I missed the spelling there. This is pre-crastination. So what is this pre-crastination all about?
Before we go to procrastination can also be our friend, but maybe we'll do a different episode on that.
We'll do it later.
Yeah. So, Precrastination, right? The pre, not a pro. We all understand what procrastination is, which is to delay and delay and delay, usually from a point of avoidance. Something is nasty, disgusting, difficult, challenging about a situation that we kind of don't act on it. But interestingly, a professor of psychology called David Rosenbaum, he postulated that the reverse, which is to act in haste, which he terms as precastination, is also bad in its own way. So it doesn't mean that to avoid procrastination, you rush into things and you kind of do things before they are due. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have been asked to propose a new idea to bring together people in your organization because you want people to kind of bond together and spend more time with each other. Uh, Now, let's say you just say, fine, I'm just going to spend 2 minutes, go with the first idea that comes into my mind, which could be that let us arrange tea together or have lunch together, uh, something that everyone has done. But and you just give it and you move on to the next task, and you kind of just want to uh, tick off your to-do list as quickly as possible. Now, let's take a different approach, which is that you gave yourself an hour or two. You happen to have a shower in the meanwhile, and you let that problem simmer away in the background, and you suddenly realize that you had some even better ideas. One of them could be to invite Choose to Think to come and do something for you, which could be much better. But what happens with procrastination is that we are in such a rush, we are so urgent, and we'll refer our viewers to our previous episode on the Eisenhower matrix and the role of urgency and importance. Is that you rush into decision making, you rush into suggestions without really spending time on it. And just because you could solve it in the first shot always doesn't mean you should. So that's the idea behind procrastination. Don't solve problems in a haste, and don't become an anti procrastinator.
Right. In fact, this reminded me of a very interesting ingredient that I had once read in some recipe. I think it was about French cuisine, but the interesting part is, I think, common to all recipes. They said the most important ingredient is time. You have to give it the right amount of time to, be able to make it as well as you can. So doing it in the right amount of time, and some of these things could be for a short duration, could be something which can be done in a second, but there are others which ought to be done in say 30 minutes, and you should not try to finish it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I think is the message that I'm taking.
Correct. So you can look at it in two ways. One is that we know the role of emotion in affecting our decision making. So it could be a situation where someone has written something that just triggered you in some fashion, and you sort of became a little angry and you lost control. That could be a place to not do procrastination and to shoot off a reply or a message. And these days, with even internal communication within an organization having become more instant messaging, like, it's very easy for us to hit send on something and then regret it. And so, Abraham Lincoln once advised that when you want to kind of express your anger against a colleague, you write a letter and then you crumple it and you throw it in the waste paper basket, and maybe next day you can pick it up and send it, because you will be in a different frame of mind. So that's again an example of dealing with that rush of urgency and emotion. So that's more on the, when procrastination can put you in the wrong sort of situation, and how a little bit of procrastination can actually save you and that relationship. But on the positive side, like we said, something like brainstorming, you say that you've been given a day to respond, come up with an idea. You shouldn't just dash off that answer, the first thing that came to mind, just because you want to show you're very proactive and you've kind of pulled out this rabbit out of the hat, and you want to be congratulated for your swift thinking. Instead, heed this balance between procrastination and precrastination. Take as much time as you're allowed to, because clearly whoever has given you the deadline is comfortable with that deadline. So wait till the last moment, put your number one suggestion on top of the sheet, but give yourselves time. And sometimes in the last 15 minutes, you might come up with something so good that will become the number one suggestion. So just give yourselves enough time that you have.
Right. So I was reading about procrastination, and one thing that also struck me was thinking about this in the context of your daily to-do lists, right? You will have a list of 25, 30 items, and there'll be a bunch of things which are very I would say menial tasks, right? Don't require a lot of time, are not that important as well, but just gives you this, feel good factor that, yeah, I have ticked off 5 items out of my list of 30. So doing that, is that an example of procrastination? Is it good? Is it bad? What would you recommend?
We should only look at it in terms of the amount of time it truly justified. So I think that could be a reflective exercise or a prospective exercise. So if it was like the equivalent of just sending a reminder to a colleague, that is something that maybe you can do instantly. But like we said, doing some kind of appraisal of a colleague and having to send them feedback, you might want to take more time, because maybe historically you figured out that when you send feedback very quickly, it came off as being very too overly candid, or too brief and crisp, and gave the wrong impression about your feedback. And so the next time you do it, you might want to say, fine, I'll extend this, I'll double the amount of time I have before I put this feedback, or I enter this and I will only send it the next day. So I think it does really depend on the nature of your tasks. Yes, you want to take things off your task list as soon as possible, but there is an element of wait and then act. Whether the waiting period is just at 1 second where you want to compose yourselves, or whether it is an entire day, could just be up to the task. And so I think for you to be a good or efficient procrastinator, you also have to be a reflective upleveler.
Right. And I think wait, you meant WAIT, but I also took it as WEIGHT. I think both make sense there. Doing this in I think in conjunction with the Eisenhower matrix, I think is a great way of looking at this, thinking about this, that apply the right weights to different tasks, and give the right amount of time. So, Raman, why is it important for uplevelers to know about procrastination, and how
Right.
can they use it?
Yeah. So this, as we already discussed a range of situations, we've talked about personal relationships, we've talked about ideas, we've talked about, uh, you know, uh, just making decisions and waiting for the right maturity time for that decision. So, like I said, we have usually two kinds of audiences here. One are leaders who are trying to do this to run more effective teams, and I think they can avoid procrastination themselves, because leaders tend to be rushed. They have a lot on their plate, and so if you do this in conjunction with spending time blocks for thinking, for example, is a good way of avoiding the pitfalls of procrastination. Someone who's a decision maker making high value decisions needs to kind of let things sink in and not be prone to being trigger happy. They might benefit from doing actionable things, such as setting aside 1 hour or half an hour of uh, thinking time in their daily schedule, so that they're not rushed into decisions. So that's an example of what a leader could do. They could encourage their teams to not just come back with the first solution that came to mind. And a lot of innovators will understand what I'm trying to say. Often your best idea is your fifth, 10th, 20th idea, the one that really stretches the boundaries. And so if you are in charge of creativity, encouraging innovation, then you want to allow that kind of space. You don't want to tell your innovators to come back with a solution tomorrow. You might have to give them a week or a month. And finally, for individuals, in conjunction with some of the other productivity methods we've spoken about before, which is Pomodoros and the Eisenhower matrix, just use this to be more productive, because your ideal decision is one that you don't have to go back and rethink and rework, right? And sometimes when we are hasty, we realize that we do the same decision 10 times. Instead, let us do one, spend 10x the amount or 5x the amount, and just get that decision right once. So there is this adage which says that measure twice and then you cut once. That is the spirit behind precrastination.
Right. So I'm going to leave you, with one last question. It's probably going to be a tricky one for you to answer. So listening to podcasts and videos at 1.5x versus watching Gangs of Wasepur at 1.5x. What do you think I should continue doing? I do both.
I think in your case, if we apply the Eisenhower matrix, maybe we will put it into the category of somewhat important and not so urgent. So I think it doesn't matter whether you watch it at 1x or 1.5x or 2x. I think you should be good.
On that note, thanks a lot, Ramanand. Thanks for this episode on precrastination. And we'll continue and meet our viewers with the next edition soon.
Thanks, Harish.